Okay. All righty. All right. Please sign to the attendance. We'll start in about 30 seconds. All right. I think we have just about everybody here, so we'll get started. Questions. Things in your mind from last week that you want to go over. Anything bothering you? Yes, Ria, go ahead.
So is fundamental fairness just the fact that like it should be fair for everybody?
Yeah. Fundamental fairness is one of those expressions lawyers use. It doesn't really mean much. It just means fairness. And what's fair is a very subjective matter. I think I said I don't like the word fair. It's a four-letter F word, right? That doesn't really tell you much. So putting the word fundamental in front of the word fairness doesn't really do much for me. It's just the thing. Is it really fair, right? Lawyers have ways of saying things without saying them, and that's one of the instances. But good question, Ria. All right. Let me try to bridge our last class to this class. In the first few weeks of the semester, we've talked about how to obtain property, how to capture property in the wild, how to mix your labor with things, how to build things, how to assert property in your own body. But today we're going to start a new topic that should have probably come first. What exactly is property, right? So far we said, how do you get property? But we haven't really said what property is. And the way we understand what property is with this metaphor, the bundle of rights, or also called the bundle of sticks. You'll see it both ways. And we're going to use this bundle of sticks to try to define what property is. Property is not some sort of absolute thing. It's not like a chattel, right? It's a series of relationships, right? Property defines relationships between a person and something. And often you can have different types of relationships at the same time. Okay? And that's what we want to talk about today, this sort of bundle of sticks. All right, any questions so far? I want to start class by asking a series of poll questions. We have two cases today. And I want to poll you all to see how you feel about the three cases, or the two cases we've assigned today. So I put the link in the chat, but I want to do question number one first. Question number one is, do you agree with the majority in Jacque versus Steenberg? Do you agree with the majority in Jacque versus Steenberg? And there's not a right or wrong answer. I want to know how the class breaks down. Okay. Almost done. Another 10 seconds or so. Wow. Much more lopsided than the other class. No, there's no C. Don't put C. That's not an answer. Okay, we're done. Someone always wants to put C, be a wise guy. All right. Question number two. Do you agree with the majority in the second case, State v. Jacque? Give me about 30 seconds. Okay. Another 5 seconds or so. Okay, this one's a little bit more balanced. All right, I think I got just about everybody. Okay, question number three, read it carefully. What I'm asking you is to pick the position that best describes how you feel about these cases. Choice A, is I agree with the majority in both cases, Jacque and Jacque. Choice B is I agree with the majority in Jacque, but not Jacque. And C is I agree with the majority in Jacque, but not Jacque. Okay, where do you fall? A, B, or now there is a C for this one, so you can't put C for this one. Okay. All right. I get everyone. Okay. Fascinating. The results are a little bit different than the first class, a little more lopsided, which is always different. Every class has different personalities. Fascinating. Teaching the same class back to back, it's so unique because I get to see the perspectives of 30 people, often very different. All right. So let's start off. I'll come back to these questions in a bit. Who's next in the recitation? Who's up? All right, Alexander. Oh, we're at Z. We're all the way at the bottom. Okay, great. All right, so then I think Nicholas is probably next after Alexander. Go back up to the top. All right, so Alexander, let me ask you a question, please. What is a bundle of sticks? I'm going to unmute the classroom. Go ahead. When I say bundle of sticks, a bundle of rights, what am I talking about?
You're talking about all the rights that. So we're talking about a bundle of sticks. I thought about it, but kind of like you bring up the Jacque example, right? So it's like the combination of things that you own that are available to you. So when they talk about like the right to exclude, that's one of the things that you have available to you in your rights when you own private property.
All right. I mean, you're giving me the right to exclude, but just in general, what does it mean to have a bundle of rights? Well, why would we describe property as a bundle of rights? I don't think you've ever been exposed to that in a semester of law school. Like torts are not bundle of torts, right? You don't have a bundle of contracts, right? Why is property a bundle of rights? Why do we use that metaphor?
I was thinking about like similar to like the Declaration of Independence. I know like life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness is originally pursuit of property. And so it's like you talk about like all these inalienable rights that you get.
What does inalienable mean? Just so everyone knows what words you're saying.
Not to be taken away from you.
That's right. Why is property inalienable?
If you own so something that was brought up in this case is like if you own something but you can't enforce that you own it, then it's worthless.
Okay. Nicholas, you there? I think you're in the classroom also, if my memory serves. Okay, thanks, Nicholas. Why do we describe property as a bundle of rights? Why would we use that metaphor?
I mean, there's a lot of different things we can do with property.
I'm sorry, you have to speak up just a little bit more. It's a little hard to hear you.
Try to unmute without feedback. Is that working?
Yeah, that works. That's fine.
Okay. There's a lot of different things you can do with property.
What do you mean?
Like you can possess it or exclude from it or capture it or.
So, in other words, what you're saying is your relationship to property has different features, maybe you might say, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Thanks, Nicholas. I appreciate that. And if you're in the classroom and it gets bad, I can mute, unmute either one. It actually makes my life very easy to go back and forth. When we're dealing with property, we speak of this bundle of rights because we want to discuss different types of relationships. And I'll give you an example, right? I'm sure a lot of you live in an apartment, right? Maybe you sign a 1-year lease or a 2-year lease, maybe. During that 1 year, you can use your property. You can invite people onto your property. You can't sell it. Not allowed to. That's a no-no. If you die, your heirs will not inherit that apartment. The lease is for your name. You can exclude people. If a trespasser comes along, you can kick him out. Your landlord can sell your apartment, but still subject to the lease. What I'm getting at here is that a given piece of property has a series of relationships, a series of connections, right? And each connection describes a different facet of property. So we say that there are generally 4 common sticks in this bundle. There's the right to sell property. There's a right to use property. There's a right to invite, to bring someone onto your land. And then we have the right to exclude. The right to exclude. And it's said in the cases, and the Supreme Court has said this, that the most essential stick in the bundle, is the right to exclude. Donna, are you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Donna, help me out here. Why do you think that the courts have said the right to exclude is the most essential stick in the bundle? What's so important about the right to exclude? Help us out here.
I guess it's the most important because it's what establishes like your ownership over that property or that thing that you have. And unless like the state has an interest in protecting that for you, then anybody can come along and use it or partake in it, even though it's your right to exclusively use it.
Okay, so what you're saying is if you can't keep people off your land, then what? It's not. Is it even your land anymore?
Yeah, I guess that's what I'm saying. Is
Okay.
that you have the right to the use and enjoyment of that property, and if that's not protected, then is it really yours or is it shared among others too?
Okay. Yeah, good point. Thanks, Donna. So, use an example, right? I have a house, right? Imagine we lived in a different world where I have a house, but anyone who walks off the street can come to my house, eat food from my fridge, sit at my desk, sleep in my bed, and it's perfectly permissible. He's not trespassing. It's you're allowed to just walk off the street into my house. I can't exclude him. That would not be very useful for me because I bought this house to have it for myself and those who I choose to associate with. But historically, this right to exclude has been considered very important, right? Even more important than the right to sell or the right to include. The right to exclude is why you have boundaries. It's why you can create what is yours and what's not yours. Right? The right to exclude is saying, it's mine. You can't come here no matter what you say. Thank you, go away. Right? And that's considered sort of this basic principle. The 2 cases we have today, which are really good to pair, are Jacque v. Steenberg Homes and State v. Jacque. And these cases, I think, illustrate completely opposite perspectives on the right to exclude. I mean, like 180 degrees apart. These are very far apart. And these cases, I think, teach these lessons quite well. So let's start. Let's start with the first case. Nazreen, you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Are you in the classroom?
Give them something.
No, I'm right over here.
Okay, because I'm hearing some feedback. Okay. Nazreen, you want to give me the facts in Jacque v. Steenberg Homes, please?
Sure. So basically, the home sold a mobile home to a neighbor of the Jacque. I'm sorry, I have my husband here on a conference.
I know, that works. Just go ahead. It's fine.
Yeah, sorry about that.
You can continue.
I need to move, so maybe I can do the next case.
I'll call you. I'll call you later. Okay, that's fine.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, I understand people have different noises, but you have to be able to be called upon. So it's just it sucks where we are, but that's where we are. Andrew, you want to give me the facts, please, in Jacque? Andrew B. Not here. David B. You here, David?
Yes.
You want to give me the facts in Jacque, please?
Sure. So there's this home company that's trying to move a mobile home.
Oh, let me just pause you. What's a mobile home? Not everyone knows what that is, perhaps.
It's a home that's easily movable. It's sometimes referred to as a trailer home.
Yeah, it's a prefabricated structure, and it's designed to move from place to place. All right, go on.
Right. Yeah, and they're usually like on semi trucks and things like that. And so they need to move from point A to B, and the road that it's supposed to go on, the best route for it, is not operable for that at the moment.
Why?
I believe it's because of the sharp curve and there's snow.
Yeah. So thanks for that, David. So let me just explain how this works. I mean, you're all, I see an Aggie flag in the background. I think you're all from Texas, or at least most of you are, and you may have never seen 7 feet of snow before, but it's a big deal, right? It's a lot. It's very hard to traverse 7 feet of snow. You have these trailers that are like, maybe 10 feet wide, and you have to put on a flatbed, and you need to bring it on 7 feet of snow. It's very unsteady. It can easily flip over. Now imagine you have to make a sharp turn, right? If you make the turn too sharp, the entire thing could flip over and it could destroy the home. So what they actually do is put these rollers, basically wheels on the side, so that it can kind of glide along the snow on the side on the drift, which is very dangerous. People can get injured. People can get hurt by trying to move this ginormous trailer through a blizzard and through this huge amount of snow. All right. Nazreen, you back yet?
I am back. Okay.
Okay, so David just gave us the basic facts. So Steenberg said it's too difficult to drive across the snow on the public road. So what did Steenberg try to do?
To haul it across his neighbor's property.
Did they have permission to drive across the Jacque's home?
No, his neighbor actually told him not to do it.
And what did Steenberg do anyway?
He just said, "I don't care. Go ahead and do it."
Yeah. So Nazreen, just help us out. There's this scene they describe inside their home, right, where Steenberg goes to their house, and what does he say to Jacque?
I think he was like, "I don't give a He was basically like, "I don't give a crap what."
Crap.
He
He didn't say
it.
crap.
Well, beef, whatever.
Yeah.
And he said, "Just get the home in there any way you can."
Okay. Thanks, Nazreen. Very good.
Mhm.
All right. So we have the situation where Steenberg goes to the house of Jacque and is like, "So how much money is this going to take, right? What's it going to take to make this happen? Give me a figure, right?" These mobile homes are not cheap. Let's just say it was a $5,000 mobile home. I'm making up a number. He's like, "Look, how much is it going to cost to drive across your land?" He's like, "There's no dollar amount. Use the road." So at that point, the manager's like, "All right, screw this, whatever." And he tells his moving crew, "Just do it. Ignore him," right? Alyssa, you here?
Yes, I'm here.
Alyssa, what do you think the manager thought would happen if he drove across his property? What do you think? What did he think would happen?
He sounds like the type of person that doesn't really think too much about that, actually.
All right, let me ask the question differently. I think you answered my question quite well. Do you think he cared about the consequences here?
Well, if he was educated about what might happen, he might have been aware of the fine, and he might have been like, "Well, that's the worst that can happen. We'll just do that." If he wasn't educated about what might happen, I don't know what he thought.
Okay, so maybe we'll consider two possibilities, right? One, he was aware that he could get a fine. How much would a fine be for?
I think it said $30.
So just let's assume he was aware, right?
Yeah.
He's facing a $30 fine to deliver a $5,000 trailer. Do you think he makes that decision? Yeah. So he's willing to pay imagine it's like, you need to go somewhere and the only parking spot is, a handicap spot. And it's like, all right, screw it, I'll pay the ticket, right? You're willing to take the ticket. Now, your other option is the IDGAF one. Like, I don't care. I don't give a crap, right? Which one do you think is more likely?
I think it was the second option.
Yeah, maybe you're right. I don't know. We don't know. All right, thanks, Alyssa.
Since he's in the business of doing that, he might have been aware.
Yeah, maybe he said, "Screw it, I'll pay the fine and go home." Right? I'm not gonna. But we don't know. And I think there was some dispute about the testimony because there's always dispute of testimony, but that's not important here. But the evidence showed that he went to the house of the Jacques. He tried to negotiate a deal. They were like, get lost. We don't want to deal with you. This is not our problem. Go use the public road. He told his people, ignore them. Go transport it. So his moving people, they basically use a bobcat, which is like this little plow type thing to push apart the snow, and they drove along his land. Now, Javon, you here? I think you're in the classroom too, if I remember correctly. Yeah, I see you guys. Okay, thank you. All right, unmute. All right, Javon, so let me ask this question, please. If you're driving this trailer across, a frozen, snowy field in Wisconsin, is it going to cause any damage to the actual soil, to the land?
No.
No,
Not.
probably not. So he sued for compensatory damages and punitive damages, right? Javon, what are compensatory damages?
I believe they're like the damages for the wrong, for the injury, or I guess you could say.
Okay, it's the damages for the wrong or the injury, right?
Yeah.
Were there any actual damages in this case?
No.
No. Why?
No, they just drove through his land.
Yeah, it was just snow. I mean, you're driving in a frozen wasteland. There's no damage to the soil. All right, thanks, Javon. So, Joseph, you here?
Yeah, I'm here.
So, Joseph, because there's no actual damages, how much compensatory damages did the jury award?
They don't give any compensatory damages that I see.
What they award? What was the damage award?
Punitive instead.
Was there anything other than punitive damages?
There's also $1 in nominal.
What does it mean to have $1 nominal damages?
For me, I took that as because they couldn't award compensatory, they still had to give Jacque something because there was still a trespassing, so you still have to give $1 for that.
Right. So just tell us. My question is, Joseph, what does it mean to have nominal damages? What does that mean?
That a law was still broken. He still has a right to relief, but just not in compensatory.
But in other words, there's no damage to the soil or the crops. Imagine they did this in the summer and they drove through his farm. They destroy his crops. Then you'd have damages, right?
Right.
But here, there's nothing. All right. Now, Joseph, help us out. What is a punitive damage? You sometimes call punies, punitive. You'll see it both ways. What's a punitive damage?
This may be just my basic way to take it, but it sounds like punish to me, just kind of to punish.
The word's punishment. Yeah. Why would you issue damages to punish? What does that mean?
Almost to like send a message to deter someone from doing it again.
Okay. So is punitive damages limiting to remedying the harm in this case?
I would say it's more broad to almost like to anyone, anywhere. Just don't do what happened here.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Joseph. Excellent. All right. So the court here, the jury in this case finds that there are no real damages. They award $1 for what's called nominal. And really all that means is we think there was a wrong here. We think there was a tort, but there's nothing actually injured, right? There's no actual harm. This case goes in appeal to the Supreme Court of the state. Steenberg argues you can't do this, right? You can't give me a punitive damage award unless there's compensatory damages, right? Because if you're not injured, why are there punitive damages? Now, Adalis, you here? Oh, yeah, you're in the classroom. Thank you. There you are. Okay, so Adalis, how much punitive damages were awarded in this case?
$100,000.
$100,000. That's a lot of money, right? How do you think the jury came up with that dollar amount?
I think they just took it personally. I think that the jury was probably a bunch of farm workers too, and maybe they wanted to say, hey, I don't want anyone to do this to me. I don't want anyone to do this to my neighbors. So I think it was just, I don't want to say it was out of emotion or like it was a reactive dollar amount, but that's the way I take it.
You're allowed to say that. You're allowed to say whatever you want. You don't have to say I don't want to say. You're allowed. You made a very fair point. Dallas, let me ask you a follow-up. You're right. Usually juries are selected from the community where you live, and this is a pretty, rural environment, probably a lot of farmers in the jury pool. How do you think they view the actions of the trailer company here?
I think I just looked at them like, are you serious? Are you just gonna ignore what we said? Are you entitled? Like, I don't know.
And I think you said something a minute ago I want to focus on. You said that the farmers and the jury would not have wanted it to happen to them. Just elaborate on that for a bit.
So let's say that someone had to transfer a mobile home, maybe not during the winter, during like a warmer season where the property could have actually been damaged, something like that.
Right. So they were sending a signal, right? It's like, don't mess with my land, right? Okay, very good. Thanks, Dallas. I think, Michael, you're in the classroom also?
Michael?
Yeah, Michael C. Yeah. And if you could just, if everyone could just rename themselves last name, comma, first, it just makes my life a little bit easier in Zoom, just last name, comma, first. So, Michael, the court begins to talk about this right to exclude, right? Why does the court think this right to exclude is so significant here?
Well, it talked about how the right to exclude is the most, protected stake in the bundle of rights, and how important the right to exclude is. That's part of your rights as a property is to have the right to exclude. If you don't have the right to exclude, is it really a property?
Okay, good. So the court says the right to exclude is very important. But Michael, let me ask you a follow-up. Why are punitive damages relevant here to enforce that right to exclude? Why are punitive damages needed?
I think it's needed to deter them from doing this again. I think there might have been previous issues where they were delivering mobile homes. You look at what profits they were going to get from delivering those mobile homes and how much would it take to really deter them if it was a small amount.
Okay, good. Deterrence, very good. So Emma, are you here, Emma?
Yes, I'm here.
Emma, let me ask you a follow-up question, please. I heard from Michael that the punitive damages are useful for deterrence. How would this $100,000 award deter future trespassing by this company?
Well, the alternative to that would be the fee of $30 they would have to pay, and $100,000 is a lot more than that, and so they would probably opt to pay that fine rather than pay $100,000.
Well, let me ask the question a little bit differently, right? I think Alyssa made this point a few minutes ago that if the manager was competent, he would say, well, I have a $5,000 trailer to deliver. The law can give me a $30 fine. Screw it. I'll just pay a $30 fine. How does that calculus change now after this case?
Well, now if you have someone telling you can't enter their property and you're doing it anyway, the damages that you're having to pay are substantially more than, $30 plus. It's just $30. So then that just that amount of money would prevent other truck drivers from doing the exact same thing.
How would the incentives change? Emma, let me ask one more time. Do you think Steenberg would likely trespass again?
No.
Why?
Because even if they had driven like maybe in a dangerous area and some damage had occurred to the mobile home is worth $5,000 and not worth $100,000.
Okay, there we go. That's what I'm looking for. Very good. Thanks, Emma. The punitive damages changes the environment, right? The punitive damages changes the calculation. It's no longer worthwhile to trespass because there's a risk of losing so much money. And the court explains that the $100,000 award here isn't just for Steenberg. It sends a signal to everyone around the state that trespassing will not be permitted. It's not just about trailer companies in the winter. It's a broad rule. Now, I think the punitive damage award here was so high because of Steenberg's conduct. The manager is basically saying, I don't care what these people think, I'm going to do it anyway. And when people in court intentionally do something wrong, not negligently or accidentally or recklessly, this is an intentional wrong, the courts are usually very unhappy, right? They don't like people being jerks, to put it simply. And I think the reckless disregard for the law, the utter disregard for the rights of the Jacques, that supported this significant punitive damage award. I mean, that award could have bankrupted this company, right? I mean, I don't know what their finances are, but that's a lot of money for a company to pay out. I don't think insurance covers punitive damage award. It might, but I'm doubtful. So I mean, this could have knocked out the company. I don't even know. Maybe they never even paid it. Who knows? I mean, the case began in 1993, right? And this decision was from 1997. So, there were almost 4 years of litigation that was stretching on. All right. Yeah, Alyssa, go ahead.
I just wanted some clarification. I was having trouble visualizing exactly what was going on here. The case says that going across the land was the easiest to auction, but and the only other alternative was the private road with the sharp turn and
Right.
the sudden snow. But if they cleared a path on Jacques' land, I would think they would have the resources to also do the same for the private road. Or if they didn't, they should have. And if you sell a home to somebody where you can't you should have known that you couldn't deliver it.
Mm-hmm.
Or if you were doing your due diligence in that industry, you before agreeing to sell this person the home, you should have found out whether or not it was practical or feasible to actually deliver this said home to them. So maybe in addition to all his attitude and everything, it was just the lack of like due care in his entire transaction.
Yeah, fair point. I don't know if it was possible to plow the public road. It mentions 7 feet of snow and drifts. It may be harder to plow a path through it because the roads may be very hilly and very curvy, whereas the farm was flat. So I don't know, but your second point's well taken.
But and even then, it's like, why would you agree to deliver a house in the middle of a blizzard if you?
I think the facts are they made the agreement in the fall before the blizzard, and they weren't actually able to deliver it till February. So, snow comes with 1 day's notice, right? It was there, and it's not there one day, next day it's there. So you could imagine that maybe when they made the transaction, it would have been feasible to deliver it on the road. But then there was maybe an unusually large snowstorm that dumps 7 feet of snow, and they're like, crap, we can't do it. We can't we're supposed to deliver it on a deadline, and we can't. Maybe the response, if you're delivering trailer homes in Wisconsin in February, you should probably be aware that snow might be an option. So, it's hard to say what the due diligence is in this situation. But good point. All right, let's go to the first poll question. And I'm seeing, my goodness, question number 1, 100% of you agreed with the majority. Wow, I've never seen 100% on this question before. My other class is like 95, which is about average. Does anyone have some doubts about it? Maybe not disagree with it, but have some doubts? 100%. That's a big consensus. Emily, go ahead.
Yeah, maybe after looking at State v. Jacque and thinking about like physical well-being and like harm that could come to a person, like in this case, if they were to be injured driving in the snow on a public road, maybe that would be a reason they would allow someone to drive through someone else's property just because of like physical injury. But yeah, I don't know. I obviously
did you look at Jacque differently after you read State v. Jacque? Is that what you're sort of getting at?
just a little bit, but not. They're two different situations.
Okay,
So it's not really-
fair enough. All right, Alyssa, go ahead.
I agree with the majority in Jacque, but I was also thinking, I don't know the financial situation of the family who was waiting for the house to be delivered.
That's a good point.
So if, you know, and since there would have been no damage done to Jacque's land, by going through it and putting it there, I think that he should have allowed it to happen. And if they were in a case where they would be homeless for a couple months until they were able to get, that road cleared, that would, I think that interest would, or should have triumphed maybe, but it depends. I mean, if the family had a place to stay for a couple months, then maybe not, but it depends, I think.
Yeah, I mean, keep in mind they're delivering a home. We don't know what the other situation of their family. It's a fair point.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, Jacque, go ahead.
But just piggybacking off of that, I think that maybe that should have been a part in the damages calculation per se. Like if there was a family, that was expecting that home and maybe could have been homeless if it wasn't delivered, or if it was a real threat to the delivery driver, then maybe award less damages for it. But I still agree that they should have been held liable for
I mean, what if I change the facts a little bit and said it was dangerous to deliver the road on that 7-foot snowbank, and the drivers could have injured themselves delivering the home?
Yeah, like I said, I think maybe less damage, not 100,000, because I guess there was more of a social interest, I guess, is a moral thing to do, to just let them pass, because there wasn't going to be, and there wasn't any damage to the land, so award less damages. But we still don't want to say that you could just ignore the wishes of the property owners and just trespass for every occasion, or that everybody's going to come and say, well, I have another story that I could tell you that makes it worth it. And maybe if that were the case, then they could have expressed it to the landowners, and not everybody's going to tell you, no, you cannot. I'm sure if there was like a true moral reason, I guess, to let them pass, and the majority of people, I'd say, would probably just say, okay, go ahead and just do it. That's what I think.
All right, Lacey?
It was in this case.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Lacey?
I was just going to say 2 points that the court makes is that this was a summer cottage for a family. So it wasn't like they needed it right now, right away. It was a summer cottage, so they could have waited and delivered it after the snow, after summer, or before summer. And then the second point that they make is that Jacque had a previous lawsuit for adverse possession, where actually part of his land was taken by people who had been trespassing on it. So that's why he was so adamant about not having trespassers on his land. That's one of the reasons why I said I agree with what the court said.
Okay. And that's right. There were facts saying that there was a summer cottage, so it's not clear they needed it right away. But it's a fun hypothetical what they were homeless, living in the tundra, freezing to death. Lacey, you're actually next, so I'll call on you while you're on the screen. Let's say that you're Steenberg, and you're kind of steamed at this case, right? You're very upset at this case, and you want to petition the legislature to make an exception to the statute, right? You want to ask the state legislature to modify the trespass tort. What would you ask the legislature to do? How would you modify the trespass tort to deal with the situation? Not everything's about the courts. We have legislatures too. They make law as well. Everyone's supposed to make the law.
I think that you could maybe look at something like State v. Jacque, and the way that the court said in certain circumstances that trespass may be, a viable option, or that maybe the property owner would have to agree to some sort of agreement. You could add.
But hold on, let me just pause right there. So you're saying that in some cases, the property owner would be forced to allow people onto his land.
Well, if they wanted to change the law, I don't agree with that, but yes, I think if they wanted to change the law, they would have to add something in there about under certain circumstances, and then maybe even enumerate what would constitute, like you were talking about, like for the well-being of,
Good.
Society, I guess.
Good. Yeah, Garrett, I see your hands up. Garrett? Oh, I'm sorry. The classroom's on mute. There you go. Thank you for your reminder.
Does this kind of go along the lines of like allowing private companies to have eminent domain rights, or is that a bit of a stretch? Because like, won't private companies get those rights, like to build a pipeline, for instance?
Yeah. So you want to tell us what eminent domain is? You'll say this in property too, but you're welcome to bring it up now.
My understanding of it is it's just, the government essentially gives an entity the right to form a function on your land, and you don't really have a say in the matter. You get compensated for it, but
Right. So eminent domain is a power of the government to seize property for public use. The government can give that power to private entities, for example, an oil company is building a pipeline, right? Or maybe a railroad company building a railroad. The government does force you to give up property rights, and they usually have to pay you for it. So maybe, Garrett, I'll ask you, imagine that the state amended the trespass statute to say you're required to let people onto your land, but they have to pay you for it, right? That if Steenberg wants to come across it, the state says, I don't know, $1 an hour. Just make up some random number. Could they do that?
I guess the state has a right to do that, and they could probably use that to try to reach more, I guess, equitable outcome, perhaps.
Yeah.
But I guess that's all depending on your view about it.
Okay. All right. Good, Garrett. Any other questions? Actually, you're almost there. Poor Sandra's between. I'll come back to you in a minute, Garrett. Any other questions in Jacque? All right. Let's move on to the next case. State v. Jacque. I'm looking at the numbers here. It's lopsided as well. It's, I think, 82% agreed with it, only 18 disagreed, which I think is usually pretty lopsided. Sandra, are you here, Sandra?
Yes.
All right, thank you, Sandra. You want to give me the facts, please, in State v. Jacque from New Jersey?
Yeah, sure. So there's a farmer, and he is the plaintiff here. He employs migrant workers for seasonal needs, and the defendants are 2 workers for the Farm Workers Division of Legal Services. One of them is an attorney, and then one of them is wanting to provide some sort of like health needs.
Mm-hmm.
So they kind of team up and go to the farmer's property, because one of them wants to provide medical need for one of the migrant workers.
Mm-hmm.
And then the other one wants to discuss a legal problem with another one of the workers.
Okay, good. Let me pause for a second. Thank you, Sandra. So just so you have some background, you may not be familiar with it. What is a migrant farm worker? Farming is a seasonal job, right? Usually in the spring, you might plant various crops, and then they grow over the summer, and the fall, you might harvest them, right? So it's not a year-round job. Jobs arise for a season, and then after the job's over, after all the plants are harvested, they move on. Very often, you would have these workers who would move from farm to farm as the seasons changed. These were generally immigrants, Hispanic immigrants usually. They often didn't speak English. The conditions on these farms were not good. They were paid, I looked it up in the 70s, $9 a week for wages. They were crammed at these homes, which I read they fit 12 people to a room. They did not have running water. The conditions were dismal. And the way these situations worked is the people were only paid when they were working. If they were ever to leave the farm to go get help or something, they wouldn't get paid. They might even get fired. So a number of nonprofit groups began to try to provide services to the workers on the farms. That is, they would go to the farm and they would give medical attention, or they would give legal services, or whatever else people needed. In this case, you had one guy, the case said he had to have sutures removed, stitches removed. I looked it up. He was slashed in the face, and he needed almost 30-something stitches. So these were serious, serious health conditions going on. Now, of course, when you want to go into someone's land, you generally have to get their permission. Back to Garrett. No, I'm here. Victor, I'm sorry. Victor G. You there, Victor? Okay. Thanks, Victor. So, Victor, let me ask you a question. What happened when Taharis and Jacque went to the farm?
When they went to the farm, they decided to aid the migrant workers, but Tedesco wanted to supervise. And
Why do you think he wanted to supervise? Let me just interrupt you for a second.
I guess he was concerned about what they would tell them.
Oh, be a little bit more specific.
Especially if these workers were being exploited, or maybe were living in some farm conditions that maybe would have been illegal.
Oh,
Afraid that they get too much information.
TMI, right? So Tedesco is worried that he might get into legal trouble if these people are allowed to talk to a lawyer. And so he wants to be present to sort of intimidate them to make sure they stay online, right?
Yes.
Okay, all right. So go on, Victor. So the what do you call it? The workers, Taharis and Jacque, they go to this farm, and Tedesco's like, well, you can talk to these people, but I want to be in the room. And what does the aid workers say?
So Tedesco hired a state trooper who refused to remove the defendants, and he refused to allow like a private legal consultation.
And at that point, what happened, Victor?
Sorry?
What happened after they wouldn't do? They only wanted private. What happened afterwards?
Tedesco filed a written complaint of the police.
Okay, all right. So Tedesco called the cops. All right, thanks, Victor. All right, let's go back to Garrett. I know you're here. I called you 2 minutes ago. All right, Garrett. So let me ask you the question. The state trooper shows up, right? Did the state trooper actually want to arrest Taharis and Jacque?
No, I don't think he did. It mentions early on in the case that basically the county prosecutor didn't really want to address this issue, and he just wanted to leave it be.
Okay, so there are a couple things going on here. So first off, the cops show up. Do they actually want to arrest Mr. Jacque and Taharis?
No, I don't believe they did.
No, they did not. Why do you think they didn't want to arrest him?
I guess I don't think the cops really saw it as much of a trespass or anything criminal.
Oh, it was a trespass, no doubt. This was a trespass. They were on the land without permission. That's a black letter trespass, right? But why do you think the cops didn't want to arrest these Taharis and Jacque?
Well, they are involved with government-funded organizations, so I imagine that factors in.
So if I'm getting money from the government, can I trespass? Is that
No, that's not a right to do it. But
why do you think the cops really did not want to make an arrest in this case? Cops always like arresting people. That's what they do. They that's what they're there for. They arrest people, right? Why do you think, Garrett, the cops did not want to make an arrest here?
I can see a big lawsuit coming out of it. So like discrimination suit or something.
No. David G.
I was thinking maybe they just knew about the state law that wouldn't bar the right to access.
Was there a state law that said that? Is there a statute?
Yeah.
Is there a statute that was on the books?
Well, it was just saying the reason that we are satisfied that under the state law, the ownership of
I know the court said that. Was there actually a law they cited?
I was just trying to think of a reason why the trooper wouldn't have wanted to arrest them.
David, did the law the New Jersey court recognize exist before this case?
I'm guessing since you're asking, no.
They made it up. Yeah, I'm not done. Catherine H, you here? Catherine H. Taylor L, you here? Taylor? Oh, you're in the classroom. I'm sorry. Thank you. Taylor, why do you think the cops did not want to make an arrest here? There's a very easy answer that people are missing.
Right? Like the migrant workers were helping these people.
Yes. Who do you think they sympathize with here?
Migrants.
Do they think they sympathize with Mr. Tedesco?
No.
Why not? Why'd they pick the workers? Why were they sympathetic to the workers here, Taylor?
Because he's a big wing farmer and
Big
he's
wing.
not helping his workers out.
Very good. Excellent. Right. Thank you so much, Taylor. Thank you. It's obvious here. These workers are being exploited, right? I think we can just be candid. They were being treated very poorly, right? All Tejaris and Jacque want to do is give them some medical supervision, maybe some legal advice, right? It's not like they were trying to go onto their land to transport a commercial trailer, right? Or they're not they were breaking onto the guy's land to steal his crops. I don't know, whatever, right? They were there to try to help people. I think the cops yeah, I don't want to do this. Unless you swear out a complaint for trespass, I'm not doing anything. And so Mr. Tedesco said, okay, I'm going to put a trespass complaint. The defendants were convicted in the trial court. Sarah L., I think you're in the classroom also, right?
Yes.
Yeah, Sarah, what happened on appeal? Something funky happened. What happened on appeal, Sarah?
I know that the court says that the man's rights and his real property is an absolute.
Oh, no, you give me the analysis, but did the prosecutor defend the judgment on appeal? Did the prosecutor argue to the Supreme Court that Tejaris should go to jail on appeal?
No.
What happened? What did the prosecutor actually do here in this case?
I don't see that anywhere.
No.
I know what the outcome was. I know
No.
why.
I'm not there. Miranda? What did the prosecutor do in appeal? A very strange thing happened.
They basically didn't say whether the statute, trespass statute, actually applied to the activity of these defendants.
Why do you think the prosecutor took this weird position?
Because they didn't want to convict defendants that were trying to give medical attention and legal advice to workers who were working on the farm.
Just like the cop, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you, Miranda. Very good. The prosecutor here didn't defend the judgment, right? The prosecutor did not defend the judgment. He didn't want Tejaris going to jail. Or paying a fine, whatever the sanction was. Now, Alexandria here.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, Alexandra, thank you. Generally, what happens, Alexandra, when one party appeals a judgment and the other party doesn't defend it? The party says, we kind of agree with it with the appellant here. What would usually happen in that case?
I imagine that they would find for the party that nobody disagrees with. That seems like that would be the outcome.
Do they have to write a long opinion about why?
I think they would probably have to mildly justify it, but I don't think they really have to go into a deep explanation if everyone is in agreement.
Do they have to make it a brand new precedent?
Here they did, didn't they?
Yeah, so that's my question, Alexandra. You anticipate my next question. Why did the court write this elaborate opinion establishing this new rule in a case where everyone was in agreement?
Because there is this precedent of the property rights being absolute, and I think they're kind of going against that idea, and there would definitely be people who disagree with that, but in the circumstances of denying rights to people who can't necessarily defend themselves well, I think they probably need to explain it.
But my question is differently. When there's no actual dispute, there's no controversy, wouldn't that be the reason to say, you know what, we vacate the convictions, these guys go free because the prosecutor won't defend it? Why did the court go out of its way to make this bold new rule in this case? That's my question.
For future circumstances.
Is that a court's job to decide future cases or decide the case before it? What's the court's job?
The court's job is to interpret the current law, but there is judicial legislating in some.
I was about to move on, but I have to give you another question. I'm sorry. You Rachel, I had a question for Rachel already, but she's gonna have to wait a minute.
No.
Judicial legislate. I'm sorry, you said something good. I have to What is judicial legislating? You got to help me out here, Alexandra.
It's a very controversial way that a court acts upon cases when something's presented and they feel very strongly about whether or not it should happen again. They sometimes create law.
Create the courts. You said courts interpret law a minute ago. I heard you very clearly. The courts
that's
also
why it's
create.
controversial.
Do they also create law?
In some ways, yeah, sometimes.
I need to give you one more question. I'm sorry because you mean
Okay.
good things. It's one of the dangers of the Socratic method. The more good answers you give, the longer you're on call for it. When I was a 1L, I think I was once on call for 45 minutes straight, and I got tired. I was like, because I kept giving the right answer, and I was like, screw it, I give a wrong answer just so I get off the hook. It was kind of I threw the towel. So Alexandra, let me give you one more question. I asked earlier, should the state modify the trespass statute? People said, no, you shouldn't do that. What happened here by the court decision? What did the court basically do?
They essentially modified the law, regardless of what the state was doing.
Yeah. Without the legislature, just by judicial legislation, to use your word. All right. You're done now. You're off the hook. Thank you. See, it's dangerous when you give a good answer. I have to ask you more. Alyssa, you've been patiently waiting. You have to see your hands up.
Yeah, you asked whether the court should decide the case in front of them or future cases. And I think they should decide the case in front of them. But in order to do that, you have to take into consideration what might happen in the future, or other policy reasons that surround why you're making the current decision. So I think they're two sides of the same coin. It's hard to separate.
So you have to look forward to look ahead of you, so to speak.
Yeah,
right?
you have to look back, you have to look at what's in front of you, and you have to look forward.
Okay, fair point. Yeah, very good point. So poor Rachel is sitting there just waiting in dread for me to call on her. So I'm going to call on you now, Rachel. I'm going to unmute the classroom. I think you're in the classroom. So we have a comment from Alyssa that, the court sometimes should look forward prospectively. And then we have a comment from Alexandra saying, this is something more akin to legislation, right? On what basis does a court rule, right? The court says New Jersey law gives a ruling, but they don't cite any statute. So they're doing common law or legislation, to use a phrase from Alexandra. What exactly is the court ruling here, Rachel? Like, what's the basis of their decision? Oh, is she not here? Is Rachel not here? Did I have the entire wind up for nothing? Oh, God. I feel like an idiot now. Jeanette, you're next. I'm sorry. I'll repeat the question. What exactly was the basis for the court's ruling?
I think they just wanted to make it clear that the right to exclude others is not absolute. And in this case, they talked about the bundle of sticks. So in this case, they didn't have that stick to exclude. And also, I know they talked about, they say that they don't have the right to control the destiny of those migrant workers. So that's not included.
Okay, hold on. They don't have the right to control what the heck? Control the destiny?
Yeah.
What does that even mean? The destiny? I mean, that's a big phrase right there.
I think it's just that they saw them in such a poor condition that it was. I mean, if you didn't let the migrant workers get the help that they needed, it could be to their detriment, and it could.
But why does property law care about that? Are they saying there's some sort of duty of care, almost like a tort thing? Does the landlord, does the Tedesco have a sort of duty of care to his boss, to his workers?
I think it goes back to what you said about property as a relationship between people and the chattel or the thing or whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, good point, Jeanette. And poor Rachel is up. She's not here. I'm sure you'll talk about her later. It's like, Black, I'm calling you. You made a big deal. You weren't here. Thanks, Jeanette. Thank you. So the court makes a few points, right? They say property serves human values. Human values. What does that mean? The court says that the well-being of people is the paramount concern, right? In the first case, they said the most essential thing is exclusion, right? The most important thing you can do is keep people out. But the New Jersey law is now different. In New Jersey, the court says the most important concern is not exclusion. The most important concern is the well-being of the people. Now, I want you to see how 180 degrees out of phase, right? In the Wisconsin case, most important thing is kicking people out, right? in the New Jersey case, more important thing is the well-being of the workers on the farm, the people. You should know, and this is not just from my class, but in general, the New Jersey Supreme Court is well known for its bold rulings. I think Alexandra said judicial legislation. You'll hear the phrase legislating from the bench. I'm sure you've heard that phrase. Or maybe judicial activism. I don't like those phrases. They're not very helpful, but you'll hear them. The Jersey Supreme Court is famous for that sort of decision making. Indeed, in our case book, this big red book sitting on your desk, whenever you have a case from New Jersey, just presume the court will reverse the common law. Let me say that again. If you have any case from New Jersey in this class, you can just safely assume the court will reverse the common law and take a new rule, modern rule. Right? But this isn't even a modern rule. It's a complete outlier. I don't know how many states have adopted it, but I think it's a very small number of states. Indeed, the court says, we recognize, this is not in your book, but it's in the actual case. They said we recognize this is a real minority rule, right? Only a handful of states have adopted it, but we're going with this rule anyway, right? They want to go with the outlier rule. So don't take this decision from New Jersey as like the majority rule. It's not. I don't think you should take it as a minority rule. It's not. It's just sort of like a different thing altogether. All right. Any questions so far? Yeah, go ahead, Alyssa.
Yeah, sorry, I know I'm talking a lot, but
No, you do not need to apologize. I mean that sincerely. I am one of the benefits of this 1L section cut in half is that there are only 30 of you, and I can call on probably about almost every one of you in a class. So actually, this sort of small section lets you talk more. So go for it.
Okay. I had one comment and one question. The first comment is you're talking about these two cases like they fly in each other's faces, but I actually don't think they do.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the primary difference that separates them is the level of necessity. Or the level of, it's just like a cost-benefit analysis, basically, as to where in the mobile home case, there really wasn't a great benefit to the community. Or like if it was their summer home, they didn't really need it. They weren't in a situation where it was an emergency or it was a the benefit to the community or the public wasn't as much as it would have been in the case with the migrant workers.
Okay.
So I think that's the difference.
Let me if I can just respond to that one, I'll let you do your question in a minute. In State v. Jacque, I'm sorry, in Jacque, the first case, let's put aside the $100,000 award, right? Just that was a lot of money. There was a trespass, right? So there was an actual trespass.
Yeah.
Did the court consider whether public interest could any sort of balancing? Was that a strict liability offense?
Oh, it sounded like it was strict. Although, if the facts had been different, if he hadn't been as bold about it or disrespectful.
But no, but that goes to the measure of punitive damages. I'm talking about the nominal, right? For the nominal, is it like a strict liability offense, you think?
Yeah.
Okay. In New Jersey law, do you have a strict liability offense anymore?
No.
If you have the right intent, you're intending to go there to help these farm workers, are you guilty of a trespass, criminal trespass?
I think it's a mix of intent and necessity.
So I think if you want to distinguish the cases, you go from basically what's a strict liability offense where you take one step on the land, it doesn't matter the justification, trespass, right? And the second case, well, maybe it's a trespass, but if certain factors are present, then we have sort of a carve out or an exception to the statute. I think that's how I see them as sort of 180 degrees out of phase, right? You go from a strict liability tort to something that's very open-ended, where if you have the right motivation and the right circumstances, you get no liability. And again, the first was a civil case. This is a criminal case, but I don't think that really makes much of a difference. Okay. And your question, I don't want to interrupt you.
Yeah, my question is, so if the lawyers or the lawyer and his, I don't know what the other guy was, I guess a doctor or
It's
something?
not clear if he was a doctor. He did some sort of medical care. I mean, to remove stitches, you don't have to be a doctor. I mean,
Yeah.
you can train
So,
people
so
to do
if they
that.
wanted to go about this legally, what was their alternative?
Good question. Oh, I was going to ask that in a couple minutes, right? Was there any mechanism in law by which he could have accessed this land legally?
Right.
So Alyssa, thank you. Let me call on someone else. Sebastian, I think you're here. I think you're in the classroom, right? Yeah. All right, Sebastian, let me ask you this question. How could, imagine you work for these farm groups, right? The legal aid people, and you go to the New Jersey legislature. What kind of law would you perhaps ask for to help your mission? What kind of law would New Jersey give you that could be helpful?
Pretty sure I understand the question.
Alyssa, I'll ask again. I'm sorry if it wasn't clear. Alyssa asked, how could they go on the land legally? Right? That was her question. It's a good question. So I'm giving you the same question. What kind of law could the state pass that would allow the government to allow these lawyers and doctors to go into the farm?
Personally, I think if they said that the migrant farmers had some sort of possessory right to pay on the property and they invite people on the land.
You're answering a different question. My question is, what kind of statute could the legislature have passed to assist these organizations with their mission?
I'm not sure, sir.
All right. Sydney, you here?
Yes, I am.
Okay, Sydney, what kind of statute could the legislature have passed to facilitate the mission of these organizations?
My mind goes to, I guess, employment laws and like prohibiting the farmer from firing the migrant workers if they do leave. So kind of just getting them out rather than bringing people in.
Okay, but what if you really need to get people in there? What could the legislature do?
Provide, I guess, a necessity exception for the.
Oh, that's good. What do you mean? What's a necessity exception? Tell me more.
Well, I would consider, and I think most people would consider legal aid and medical assistance to be necessary, like a basic right almost.
Do you remember, Sydney?
So kind of allow it.
I'm sorry to interrupt. Do you remember from torts the safe harbor doctrine? Does that sound familiar?
I hope it shouldn't because it doesn't.
Okay, well, I'll help you out here. Right, so the doctrine in torts is often called safe harbor. So imagine you're at sea, you're on a boat, and there's a very bad storm, right? And you need to dock in a harbor, but you don't have permission to dock there. But if you stay at sea, you're going to die. The courts have recognized this sort of safe harbor doctrine where you're allowed to come into a seaport, dock in a harbor, and you're not going to be convicted of trespassing, right? Because you're going to die otherwise. I'll give you an example that's from my experience. I used to live in Pennsylvania when I was clerking. It's very cold there, very cold. Not Wisconsin cold, but it's pretty cold. And one day there was a really bad snowstorm, and I made a mistake, which you should never do. When there's a snowstorm, do not turn on your wipers. Why? Because they freeze and they crack off. So the wipers snapped off. Driving in a blizzard without wipers is very, very dangerous. I would not recommend it. So I was able to somehow drive to a Walmart and buy wipers. But then I couldn't install them. It was so cold. My fingers were freezing. You have to snap the thing on, right? I couldn't even install them. So I found a bank which had a drive-through ATM and a canopy over the driveway. I was able to then install my wipers in that shelter. Now, I was trespassing. I did not have permission to be there. I was not a customer of that bank. I had no business there. It was after hours. It was dark. No one was there, so no one cared. But I was trespassing. But I think there's an exception for the safe harbor doctrine, right? Because I needed it to get home. I couldn't drive. So I think what Sydney was getting at a minute ago is that there's almost a necessity defense, right? That these people need this aid in order to survive. So perhaps the legislature could basically say there's an exception to the trespass statute if you're providing essential care. Right, but we don't have that statute. Instead, we have the court making what Alexandria called legislation, right? Judicial legislation, where they've created this carve out for providing essential care. The way the court frames it, I want to get the actual test. The ownership of real property does not include the right to bar access to governmental services for migrant workers. The government cannot deny access for services for the workers. So there's basically the trespass statute, which is usually a strict liability offense, but if you fit in this sort of exception, this carve out, you're not guilty of trespass. All right. Alyssa, you've been patiently waiting. Go ahead.
I think you asked my question in a little bit different way. You were talking about like what could the legislature enact in like a change in their statute, but I was more talking about like what did those people have available to them at that moment? Like someone needs medical attention, you're not going to go, oh, let me go to the legislature and have them change the statute so that I can help these people. Like that's just not a feasible way to. So how could they have done that any better?
The law doesn't always allow you to do what's right. Property is a cold doctrine. It's usually very harsh. And the traditional answer is if there's someone on the land who needs medical care, perhaps you can call an ambulance and the ambulance can go there. And I suppose the Tedesco would let the person go into the ambulance. But that person might lose their job or wouldn't get their wages. So the short answer is there's not always a good answer under the law, which is why if the law sucks, sometimes you have to change it. And you can change it through legislation, or in this case, by going to a court. And you do it in a case where no one's in dispute, where everyone agrees on the bottom line. So my point earlier is this is a very unusual case to make such a sweeping change to the law, where no one was in dispute, where everyone agreed this case should go away. And I think the court picked these facts was because they were so egregious. They were so terrible. And Mr. Tedesco has such bad conduct that it makes it easier to reach this ruling. Okay. Did I answer your question, Alyssa?
Yeah, I was just wanting confirmation that there was nothing better they could have done.
Not that I'm aware of. Let me go on. I only have a few minutes left. Is there any? I want to go to the last poll question. We did question number 3, and no one put C, which is fascinating. No one agreed with Jacque, but not Jacque. Let me ask this question. Did anyone change their mind after this class? They voted one way to start a class, but now they have a different opinion after class. Sometimes people change their minds. No one? Well, you are all very confident. I change my mind every year. Actually, every year I teach this case, I kind of go back and forth. Students get mad at me because they say, "Oh, Blackman, I watched a video from last year. This is what you said last year. You said something different this year." I'm like, "Oh, what that? I changed my mind. I'm allowed to. It shows your thinking." I had students complain, like, "You said something different last year." I don't know. I don't remember what I said last year. Anyone who agreed with both cases wanted to try to reconcile them. Maybe I'll call maybe one person. I have a few minutes left. Anyone who agreed with both Jacque and Jacque and want to reconcile them, who lined them up. I'll call on someone if you don't raise your hand. Luis. Yeah.
The way I thought about it, and I know that the second case was a criminal case and the first one was a civil case, but it almost kind of is akin to negligence per se, where there's like excused violations and unexcused violations. So the first one would obviously be an unexcused violation because it was just motivated by personal, drivers. But then the second one was for public benefit. So that could be a excused violation.
Okay. Luis, I had called on you and someone intervened. Do you want to comment?
No, I mean,
how do you line these cases up? How do you reconcile these two cases, Luis?
Just side by side. The explanation that was given was pretty dang good, I think. So the Jacque case, I don't know who was talking. I couldn't really see because it's just the faculty. But anyways, the guy was just kind of doing it out of his own personal needs for his own business. like, there was really no public good or public interest in him trespassing. Versus in the shack.
So you have a difference. 1 second. So your conception of public interest is helping the farm workers, right?
Correct.
You don't think that getting the trailer, the summer cottage to whoever it was, is in the public interest?
I think it's in those people's interest, whoever bought that trailer. And then again, like Lacey said earlier, it wasn't like, guys, we're homeless, I need a house today. It was, this might be my vacation cottage or my hunting cottage. It's something that's not necessary. It's not a necessity, but it could be useful. Versus the shack case where these people, the migrant workers, it was for the public good because they are a group of people in a certain situation that do need help. And if they don't get this help, sooner than later, it could be very bad for them. So
okay,
that's why
all right. We're just about out of time. I have Garrett and Javon, and then we'll wrap up. So Garrett and then Javon, one after the other.
So you kind of talk about how property, it's, a lot of it's based on relationships, and you have just some very different relationships in these two cases. Like in one case, you have a landowner, and you have someone trying to get a trailer park across his land, or not trailer, a mobile home across his land. It's a summer home. Whereas in the other case, you have a relationship between an employer and kind of a underrepresented and group of people. So you just have, I don't know, different way the laws apply based on different relationships.
Okay, very good. And Javon, last comment, please.
I saw the first case more of the defendants were moving in their own interests because of inconvenience. And I guess that would be like in simple terms and how I would put it, because it would have took more work for them to move the trailer without going through the land. And so that's why I'm like, to me it makes sense why they shouldn't make an exception for that, just for someone's inconvenience. And then on the other hand, it was, like Barrett said, they were trying to legally help, underrepresented community, people who didn't know their rights at all. The immigrants didn't have any knowledge of any of their rights. And so that would, in my opinion, would come as a private necessity.
Okay, necessity doctrine. Okay, I like it. A couple of you made that point. Very, very good, Ron. Thanks. All right, the minute poll's running. Let me just briefly summarize and let things go. We'll be coming back to this concept of bundle of rights quite a bit, right? This right to exclude. But in the future, we'll be doing other six as well: the right to acquire, the right to sell, the right to convey. But keep in mind from this class that property is not some sort of absolute thing. There's this bundle. There are these different aspects of it. And in any given dispute, a person might have stick number 1, but not stick number 2. They might have stick number 3, but not stick number 4. Maybe you can sell stick number 1 to a person, but keep stick number 2 for yourself. So each stick can be separated. Okay? That's all I have. Thank you all so much.
I'm going to turn this off now.
Is that Professor Field?
Yeah.
I recognize you. I recognize you from the reflection. Good seeing you. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Are you teaching right after me in this class?
I finished a little late, so you're quiet. So I apologize.
I'm sorry. I'll do my best to wrap up on time.
No, and I normally don't finish early.